Family hospice and palliative care is one of the oldest not-for-profit hospices in Western Pennsylvania. In fact, they began as a volunteer-supported hospice before there was even reimbursement for hospice care. So it began as a social movement assembled by local healthcare providers and volunteers in the community, and then of course has grown over time with the introduction of the hospice Medicare benefit and the aging population here in Western Pennsylvania. Hospice care is going out to the person that needs us and visiting with them, with their family, or in the facility that they call home, and providing the intermittent nursing care, medical care, CNA help, social work, and spiritual care that they need to meet their last months in comfort, in place, without a lot of treatments and procedures that they don't want, and without a lot of mystery and medicalization. So it's about comfort and quality of life, and family hospice is wherever you are. In addition to that, we have 2 inpatient units, one in Lawrenceville and one here in Mount Lebanon. And those are for folks that can't get the symptom control and the comfort that they need in the home environment. And so we'll allow them to spend time in our beautiful facilities, funded by donors, that's why they look so beautiful, and get those symptoms under control in an environment that feels very much like home, or very much like a really nice bed and breakfast. And we do get raves about the magic that happens in our inpatient centers. The biggest strength of family hospice as an organization is our staff. The people at the bedside and people like myself and like you that are behind the scenes are doing this because it's a calling, and are doing this because they know that every day we all walk on sacred ground. And that level of commitment to our mission isn't something that can be duplicated by just hiring anybody. So we listen carefully for the clinical skill, but we also listen carefully for the hospice heart when we interview people to come on board. So our biggest strength is the staff, because they are family hospice.
My role with family hospice and palliative care is an RN admissions nurse, which gives me the opportunity to be the first face that my patients and their families get to meet. Some of the first questions that my families ask are, how does the program work? Are there any charges that I'm going to inquire? How often are you going to be here for us? Who is involved in my, significant other or parent's care? And, what's the plan of action going to be? The types of patients that I admit into our hospice program are those that have a life-limiting diagnosis that no longer want to seek treatment. There's a variety of different types of diagnoses which involve cardiac, respiratory, neurological, and cancer patients. We see patients wherever they call home. It can be, at that time, a hospital, a nursing facility, independent living, or their family or their home.
Grief is extremely universal, but also unique. And the reason being is grief, there's really no timeline for grief. Grief is different for everybody. That's important to remember. I think in our society, we forget that. We think somebody should feel better at a certain marker, say 6 months, 1 year, some magical number. And the reason why it is so different is because of the bond that you have with that particular person. So if you have a very close bond with somebody, it might take you longer to grieve, longer to heal than somebody who you were an acquaintance with, who you didn't see every day, you didn't share every intimate detail with your life. It's important to remember that there are many common grief reactions. And with common grief reactions, those are really unknown to many people. That's typically why people make an appointment to see me, because they do not understand that what they're going through physically, emotionally, and spiritually, that is actually a grief reaction. They might mistaken it for something else. It's also important to remember that there's healthy ways of coping with grief and non-healthy ways of coping with grief. And that's really what we focus on in counseling, is the healthy ways to cope instead of the non-healthy ways. But there's really no right or wrong way to grieve. That's important for people to remember. It's how you cope with the grief. Grief is universal in the sense that everybody experiences grief. Anywhere from young infants grieve all the way to people who are over 100 years old. So it's important to remember that that is a part of the natural human being in our psyche, is that we all grieve. We offer a lot of community support. I think that's important for the public to know. And our bereavement support, whether it's support groups or children or teen camps, is free to the community. You do not have to use family hospice, and palliative care services in order to utilize the camps or the groups. Our 6-week bereavement support, that is a specific educational program, and we have an actual educational packet that we provide to all of the participants in the group. The people who facilitate the groups are trained volunteers. Typically, they're retired professionals from the field. So we're very blessed, very lucky to have people who are able to provide such a great deal of care. Our children's camp, that is a very great outreach program. We have a lot of outside sponsors who are able to donate things such as pizzas or stuffed animals, carrying blankets, things of that nature. And it's a 1-day camp, which is very interesting, so that there's not a huge commitment to it. Because a lot of times parents or guardians are hesitant if there's a huge commitment to something, but they're able to come with their child. Ages 6 through 12 we offer for the children. And we are able to do different sorts of things at the camp, such as art therapy, music therapy, pet therapy. And the kids really get a lot out of it. And we have professional, maybe retired volunteers, as well as our professional bereavement staff and family hospice and palliative care clinical staff as well at those camps. Our teen camp is relatively new, and we hold it at a place called Auberly in McKeesport. And Auberly has a type of a challenge course, which is a little bit like an obstacle course, because what teen wants to sit around and talk about grief? That's pretty intimidating to them. So it's being able to utilize a teen's greatest instinct, which is typically movement, getting up, getting around. And they tackle these challenge courses with their parent, guardian, whomever the family member is, as well as our family hospice staff and the Auberly trained staff as well, in order to overcome these obstacles. And then after they're completed the obstacles, we sit around and we talk about how we were able to get that challenge through, how we were able to finish it. So I think that's a really great piece of the teen camp, that it's not this sitting around talking as, say, adults would. It's very intimidating, again, to teens typically. And it's being able to get outside and exercise and do things.
The volunteers here with Family Hospice are an integral part of the organization, whether it's behind the scenes or enhancing the lives of our patients and our families. With the behind the scenes, I like to think about volunteers that are touching the patient right from the beginning to the very end. So we have volunteers that do the admission packets that go out with the patient, and we have volunteers that do bereavement calls to the families and write notes to them too as well. The patient volunteers help in a number of different ways in terms of maybe going out to the house, sitting with the patient, so the caregiver can go to have lunch with a friend, go to the grocery store, whatnot. Or they're just going there to visit, be that friendly visitor with the patient and spend time with them. Or they're going to a nursing home or a hospital to visit. Just all kinds of different ways that they help our patients and their families. The volunteer pool has really kind of grown and is diverse. We have volunteers of all ages. We have retired folks, and then we have high schoolers. Just recently we had a wonderful high school student come to the center after school and play her violin for a patient. And I know how much that meant to that patient as well as all the patients on the inpatient unit. And then we have college students that volunteer, and just people from all different walks of life that maybe have been touched by hospice and want to give back in some way. And whatever their talents are, we try to find a fit for them to be able to use those talents, whether it's playing a violin, whether it's taking your therapy dog to visit patients, or whether it's walking dogs for our patients that can't get out to take their dog out or care for their pet. My volunteers really say they get so much more than what they give in their interactions with the patients. And they learn life lessons that sometimes they can't get in other settings, because this is just a critical, very important time for patients.
All of us meets the end of life eventually, and for many of us, that's a process that takes weeks or months rather than a sudden event like a car accident. And I would love to see end of life for everybody be something that's comfortable, be something that isn't frightening, be something that doesn't have a sense of mystery and powerlessness to it, something that's informed, supportive, and entirely comfortable. And for me, that's what hospice and palliative care does. And I wish everybody knew that this was a choice that they had.